Creation reveals the living God. Have you ever felt the warmth of the sun on a cool day? Or a cool breeze on your face in the summer? Or have you ever listened and enjoyed the sound of birds singing with your ears? Well, did you see those warm rays, breeze, or sound waves? Well, no. But does that make it difficult to learn of them and enjoy them? Certainly not. Similarly, it is not difficult for us to answer the question, since we cannot see God and live, how can we learn about Him? How can we draw close to Him? Well, God's own written word answers those questions for us. Let's examine two verses, Acts 14:15 and Romans 1:20. First, speaking to people in Lystra, people who worshipped gods of stone, note how Paul introduces them to the living God in Acts chapter 14 and verse 15. Acts 14:15 says, and saying, "Men, why are you doing these things? We also are humans having the same infirmities as you do, and are declaring the good news to you for you to turn from these vain things to the living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all the things in them." Well, how does Paul introduce these people to the living God? He refers them to the magnificent things that He made, the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all the things in them. Now people the world over observe all these things, but they haven't necessarily drawn close to God. Many enjoy looking at creation, but few recognize that they are gaining a glimpse into the heart and mind of their Creator. What more is needed? Well, let's read the second verse, Romans chapter 1, verse 20. Here at Romans 1:20 we read, "For His invisible qualities are clearly seen from the world's creation onward, because they are perceived by the things made, even His eternal power and Godship, so that they are inexcusable." Now do you see the point? Is it enough just to observe or even study the creation? What does it say we must observe in the first part of this verse? Note, His invisible qualities. We must look beyond the awesome created universe. We must see the qualities and personality of our loving Creator. This is what will draw you closer to Him. Now, is this difficult to do? Not really. But it does require that we make a conscious effort to contemplate Jehovah's marvelous creative work. How does Paul put it in the middle of this verse? Note, God's invisible qualities are perceived by the things made. See, since the world's creation, particularly since the creation of intelligent human creatures who could perceive God's existence, it has been evident that there is a Creator of immense power, a God worthy of devotion. Now just how convincing is this evidence of a living God? Well, what do we read at the end of this verse? It says, "So that they are inexcusable." Who? Well, those who fail to acknowledge God's glory are inexcusable. There is no excuse. His love, wisdom, power, and many other qualities can be seen all around us. Consider the following examples. Jehovah's power is revealed in the two shields that keep us safe right now. First, have you ever gone outside at night to watch a meteor shower? How thrilling if you get to see perhaps several bright flashes of light go streaking across the sky. Just imagine though if the atmosphere didn't burn most of these up. The atmosphere actually protects us from a daily barrage of millions of meteoroids. They range in size from tiny particles to boulders. Now, if the atmosphere didn't burn the majority of these up, instead of going outside to watch a meteor shower, why we would head for the bomb shelters. Have you ever stayed out in the sun too long and got a little sunburn? One time I was fishing and facing the bright sun all day and forgot the sunblock. I wore Polaroid sunglasses, though, and at the end of the day I had a sunburned face and white eyes, sort of a reverse raccoon effect. Maybe you have a similar story. But you know, we would be in much greater danger if it were not for Earth's atmosphere. An outer layer of the atmosphere, the stratosphere, contains a form of oxygen called ozone, which we've heard a lot about the last several years. This ozone layer absorbs up to 99% of incoming ultraviolet radiation. It thus helps to protect many forms of life, including humans, from dangerous radiation. Have you ever gotten to see the northern lights? What an experience to get to see them dance around in the northern sky, especially if you get to see them in color. Yet, without Earth's magnetic shield, we would be in great danger. It's called the magnetosphere and originates deep inside the planet and stretches far out into space. Now this shield protects us from the full force of cosmic radiation and dangers emanating from the sun, including solar flares which release in minutes as much energy as billions of hydrogen bombs. Also, coronal mass ejections, CMES, which blast billions of tons of matter from the sun's corona into space. Now both solar flares and CMES trigger intense auroras, colorful displays of light visible in the upper atmosphere near Earth's magnetic poles. We know them as the Northern Lights. What a testimony to the power of our Creator. Now next, Jehovah's wisdom is revealed in the cycles that sustain life here on Earth. Do you enjoy growing a garden, flowers, or a nice green lawn? Well, the ability for this to happen year after year is no mere accident. Jehovah created the water cycle, the carbon and oxygen cycles, and the nitrogen cycle. These provide for an unending supply of water and other necessary components that make those beautiful and beneficial gardens that we enjoy possible. Jehovah's wisdom is also revealed in the life he created on Earth. Now humans are clever engineers, but they learn much from the ingenious designs found in nature. Maybe you've heard of biomimetics, the study of the design features of various creatures. One example is that of designers of highly maneuverable aircraft. To achieve their goals, they are mimicking the seagull's wings. You parents better hope your children are never able to mimic the gecko lizard's feet. He's the little guy that can run up walls and ceilings. Actually, researchers have established a database that already catalogues thousands of different biological systems. In view of Romans 1:20 that we read, and just a slight examination, we must raise the question, how can people not see that creation reveals the existence of the living God? In view of the technological advances and recent discoveries, never has mankind been so inexcusable. It certainly is difficult to understand how anyone can deny such evidence. Yet, consider the false teachings that obscure blind people to the truth about God. We also realize that many have been taught these from youth. So, understandably they may draw a wrong conclusion. There are two false teachings that blind many to the truth about God. First, the theory of evolution. This teaching undermines faith in God, contradicts the Bible, and robs people of hope. Here is how people feel who accept this theory. Modern understanding of evolution implies that ultimate meaning in life is non-existent. That's from the journal Scientific American. Well, consider the implication of those words. If ultimate meaning in life were non-existent, then you would have no purpose in life other than to try to do some measure of good and perhaps pass your genetic traits on to the next generation. At death, you would cease to exist forever. Your brain, with its ability to think, reason and meditate on the meaning of life, would simply be an accident of nature. Certainly no hope there. Now second, the teaching of creationism. This teaching asserts that the universe, the earth, and all life are only a few thousand years old. Some fundamentalist Christians may have high regard for the Bible, but contend that God created all things in 6 24-hour days just a few thousand years ago. They reject any evidence that contradicts their view, including evidence from the Bible, thus making it appear unreasonable and inaccurate. Just how do those two teachings compare with what creation reveals and what the Bible really teaches? Not well at all. The thing is, our faith in God is built on fact and reason. Rather than ignore the discoveries of science, we welcome them. A greater knowledge of the world around us enhances our understanding of God. In fact, as you can see at Proverbs chapter 2, verse 10, the Bible teaches us to love knowledge. Let's note that. Proverbs chapter 2, and in verse 10, we read, "When wisdom enters into your heart and knowledge itself becomes pleasant to your very soul." Now the context here, as you can see in verse 12, is how to be protected from someone who would try to persuade us to take a bad course. See how gaining knowledge is emphasized in verse 10? Here a fervent desire for accurate knowledge is stressed. Yes, knowledge itself becomes pleasant to your very soul. This is what would protect us. Just the opposite of blindly accepting some belief and ignoring facts that might contradict it. Jehovah wants our faith in him to be built on proof and evidence, not on human philosophy or religious tradition. How do we know this? Well, along with thoughts like we just read in Proverbs, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, let's note the definition he gives us of faith. That's Hebrews chapter 11, and the first verse. At Hebrews 11:1 we read, "Faith is the assured expectation of things hoped for, the evident demonstration of realities though not beheld." Well, what does this mean? Well, let's focus on the two key phrases here that are used to explain faith. First, notice the phrase, assured expectation. Now, at the time of the writing of the Bible book of Hebrews, the Greek term translated assured expectation was commonly used. It often appeared in business documents and carried the idea of a guarantee of future possession of something. To illustrate, let's say that you want to buy some new kitchen cabinets. So you shop around and finally decide on the ones that you want. When you order them, what are you given? A sales receipt. The cabinets will be delivered later. The sales receipt in your hand gives you reason for faith in the company from which you bought the item. In a sense, that receipt is your guarantee that you will receive what you purchased. Well, similarly those who have faith that God will fulfill his promises have a guarantee that they will receive what they hope for. Now look again at that verse, and see the second expression used there, evident demonstration. Now this carries the idea of producing evidence that contradicts that which only appears to be factual. For instance, the sun. The sun appears to revolve the earth, rising in the east, moving through the sky, and setting in the west. However, evidence from astronomy and mathematics reveals that the earth is not the center of the solar system. Now, once you become familiar with that evidence and accept it as true, you have faith that the earth revolves the sun, despite what your eyes tell you. Well, similarly, our faith is based on evidence. It gives us the ability to see things as they really are, not merely as they seem to be. So, even though some scientists may think I look like I could have descended from some ape, I have evidence to the contrary. Now for decades, Awake magazine has helped millions to build this kind of faith. It has helped us to appreciate what creation reveals about God. It has also exposed false religious doctrines that mislead. For example, Awake currently has the feature, was it designed? Remember the article, was it designed, the kingfisher's beak, in the April issue? The shape of its beak allows it to dive into water with very little splash. Now I have observed this many times and have not been too happy about it. Why? Well, I assume he's eating trout I want for myself. But interestingly, Japanese engineers imitated the shape of its beak on their bullet train. Due to its high speed, this train used to create a large boom when it would pass through a tunnel, and this was very annoying to people living in that area. With the changed design, however, no problem. Also, consider the article on shark skin in a February issue. Do you worry about picking up an infection if you have to go to the hospital? It has been a challenging problem. In the future, that risk may be less because of what has been learned from studying the skin of sharks. Now, these are just two examples of the multitude of design features that give testimony to our living God. Consider the February 2009 Awake cover series, Earth Designed for Life. 36 million copies were published in 81 languages. This issue honored the living God by drawing attention to his wisdom in designing the Earth. The September 2006 Awake was a special issue devoted entirely to exposing the false doctrines of evolution and creationism. One article on pages 9 and 10 was, Did God use evolution to create life? It clearly showed that the theory of evolution is in no way compatible with the teachings of the Bible. Also, the evolution theory and the teachings of Jesus are incompatible. Pages 13 through 17 examine the question, is evolution a fact? The article beginning on page 18 examined the question, does science contradict the Genesis account? The initial printing of this issue was 32,400,000 in 81 languages. It was received so well, though, that it was reprinted 4 times, finally totaling almost 48,200,000, an extra 16 million or 50% of the original printing. A sister in the United States wrote, the campaign to offer this special issue went extremely well. One woman asked for 20 copies. She is a biology teacher and wanted each of her students to have a copy. A brother wrote, I have been active in the field service since the late 1940s and am nearing 75 years of age. But I have never enjoyed my field service as much as I have this month offering the special issue of Awake. I remember I got to visit the high school I attended, let's just say several years ago, and the principal accepted enough to put a copy in each teacher's mailbox. I'm sure many of you had similar experiences. But please pay special attention to this next comment. After expressing appreciation for this issue, a sister in Sweden wrote, I hope we will get a brochure that discusses this subject. Well, what do you think? Would that be a good idea? Well, if so, you'll be thrilled at this announcement. It is our pleasure to release the brochure, Was Life Created? Applause. This brochure is a compilation of articles on this subject from Awake, and is designed to be used in our public ministry. Now first, you'll notice the beautiful pictures and teaching diagrams. The 5 topics covered are 1. The living planet. 2. Who designed it first. 3. Evolution myths and facts. 4. Science and the Genesis account. And 5. Does it matter what you believe? Each section ends with a box entitled, How would you reply? The questions are designed to help the reader reason on the information he just considered. The brochure includes a bibliography for those who want to check the context of the quotes used. This brochure was Life Created is designed to be used as the stepping stone for a Bible study. Page 31 invites the reader to ask for 2 publications, the brochure A Book for All People and a book What Does the Bible Really Teach? Parents will find this colorful brochure useful in helping their younger children to appreciate our living God. Our youths are a particular target of the theory of evolution. Scientists, school teachers, nature documentaries, and even entertainment media such as movies promote the idea that evolution is a fact. How can we further help our young people to combat this God-dishonoring theory? Well, one way is to help them to develop their power of reason. The Bible encourages us to put what we are taught to the test. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1, warns not to believe every inspired expression, but test the inspired expressions to see whether they originate with God. You know, sometimes claims are made about new evidence that is supposed to support evolution. But if tested, will it really hold up? A second way is to provide them with material that discusses the very subjects they may face in a science class at school. For example, what can you say in response to the sensational news reports that scientists have found fossilized missing links that prove evolution true? What of the assertion that humans evolved from ape-like creatures? How would you answer claims that scientists have proved in their laboratories that life could originate by chance? Well, those questions were not covered in the brochure Was Life Created? In order to provide in-depth answers, we are happy to announce the release of another new brochure, The Origin of Life, 5 Questions Worth Asking. Applause. Now this brochure specifically designed with our school students considers the following questions. 1. How did life begin? 2. Is any form of life really simple? 3. Where did the instructions come from? 4. Has all life descended from a common ancestor? And 5. Is it reasonable to believe the Bible? Each of the first 4 sections ends with a box entitled Facts and Questions, which helps the reader to test the logic of what he is taught. This brochure also includes a bibliography for those who want to check the context of the quotes used. Much of the material focuses on the working of the cell, the basic unit of life. The whole theory of evolution rests on the assumption that life, the cell in particular, could arise by chance. Well, building a theory on that assumption would be like building a skyscraper without a foundation. And just as a skyscraper built without a foundation would collapse, a theory that cannot explain the origin of life will crumble. Consider just some of the facts discussed in this brochure. Your body is made up of some 100 trillion tiny cells, including hair cells, skin cells, and brain cells, to name a few of the more than 200 different types. Contained in the DNA of each of your cells are the instructions for how to build your entire body. DNA's capacity to store and copy information still has no parallel in today's computer age. How efficient is the information recording system in your DNA? Well, just 1 gram of DNA contains as much information as not a million, not a billion, but a trillion compact discs. Now I have no idea how much that is, but it sounds like an awful lot. A teaspoonful of dry DNA can contain enough information to build not only all 7 billion people alive today, but also 350 times that number of people. Certainly not something that could arise by chance. The Origin of Life, 5 Questions Worth Asking will be useful for our youths and for those we meet in our preaching work who want a more in-depth discussion about the evidence of the living God. The program tomorrow morning will include demonstrations showing how these new brochures can be used in both the field and in the family. For people to draw near to God, they must first believe that He exists. The 2 brochures, Was Life Created? And The Origin of Life, 5 Questions Worth Asking, will help humble people gain profound reverence for the living God. They will certainly help many come to feel as David expressed himself in the 139th Psalm, verse 14, which sentiments we already share. Let's read that together. Psalm 139, verse 14. Psalm 139, 14 reads, I shall laud you, because in a fear-inspiring way I am wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful as my soul is very well aware. Yes, we join in lauding Jehovah, the living God, whose works are wonderful. and our privilege is to help others, including our children, to develop a desire to give Jehovah, the Creator of all things, the love and honor he so richly deserves. Applause. End.